Hopefully, this will help you organize what the structure of this organization is. It illustrates hierarchy and roles, and it helps you understand the relationships between every department and employee.
The mics do work when I press the
test.
button. Okay.
Test.
Good morning, boys and girls. Good morning. On behalf of Broward County, I would like to welcome everybody here to our joint workshop of the Broward and Palm Beach Water Boards. I think that these meetings are extremely helpful because our water issues do not stop at the county line. I will remind everybody that our meetings are taped, so consider that when you're about to make your comments. They can be seen, at least in Broward, on our TV, and I assume that Palm Beach has comparable issues. I would ask any of the members of either the Broward or Palm Beach County Water Boards, where the Water Advisory Board, Palm Beach is the Water Resources Task Force, to please sit at the head table. I will remind everybody, please, to mute your phones, and before I do so, I better make sure mine is. Yes, it is. And I will ask Greg Mount now to read the roll call for the Water Advisory Board.
Thank you, sir. Senator Steve Geller.
Here.
I have Mayor Welch online. Councilmember Jim Albritton.
Present.
Commissioner Pamela Beasley Pittman. Commissioner Doug Bell.
Here.
Governing Board Member Ron Bergeron. Commissioner Kevin Biederman.
Here.
Vice Mayor Mark Bogen. Commissioner Anthony Caggiano. Albert Carbon. Commissioner Rhonda Eaton. Mayor Gomez.
Good morning.
Vice Mayor Good.
I am here.
Commissioner Gordon. Commissioner Horland. Councilmember Horland. Vice Mayor Mateo Bowen. I have Mark Peterson online. Councilmember Susan Starkey online. Senator, we have a quorum of the WAB.
Thank you. Can you please call the roll for the Water Resources Task? The Technical Advisory Committee.
Certainly. Albert Carbon. Randy Brown. Alan Garcia. Allison Widoshinsky.
Present.
Brett Butler. Commissioner Doug Bell.
Here.
Darren Bedore. David Walker. Dawn Tietzel. Giovanni Battista. Heather Cuniff.
Here.
Isabel Cosio Carballo.
Here.
Jeff Jang. Dr. Jurado.
Here.
Jose Lopez is online. Luis Ochoa is online. Patrick Davis. Pete Kwiatkowski. Rafael Frias. Renuka Muhammad is online. Rodrigo de Castro is online. Stephanie Pearson is online. Steve Holmes.
Here.
Suzanne Meckler. Talal Avi Karam.
Present.
We have a quorum of the TAC.
Thank you. According to my annotated agenda, I'm asking you to read the roll call for the Water Resources Task Force. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Well, can you please then read the roll for the Water Resources Task Force?
I'm stepping in all roles today, sir.
Excellent.
Melise Sundstrom. Joaquin Almazan. Reynaldo Diaz. Dee Halpern. Karen Lithgow. Greg Langowski. Greg Weiss.
Here.
Poonam Kalkat. Tommy Stroud. Jay Steinley. I know there was a alternate Mark Elsner for Jay Steinley online. Rachel Litt. Robert Shore. Michael Johnson.
Is there a quorum?
I have 5 out of 14, and I think 2 more online. So I do believe we have a quorum of the Water Resources Task Force.
Okay. I'd also please note the presence of, is it Commissioner, Council Member, Mayor, Vice Mayor Caggiano? Commissioner. He's had all of these titles at one point or another. And, sir, could you identify yourself, please? Oh, I know that. Okay. I'm sorry, I know that. Pete Kwiatkowski also present. At this point in time, Chair Weiss and I will both be making opening remarks. Would you care to go first, sir? Before you do, let me just say that it is a pleasure working with Greg Weiss. What is your current, are you currently mayor?
Commissioner.
Commissioner, okay. Greg and I take turns, being commissioner, mayor, vice mayor, so it's tough keeping track of which we are at any given time. But, water's a joint issue, but it's always particularly good to, it seems Greg and I work on a lot of issues together at Florida Association of Counties or Water Board or whatever. So it's a pleasure to welcome you here to Broward County, Commissioner, and you're recognized.
Thank you, sir. And good morning, everyone. And it's first off, I want to thank Broward. I'd like to thank Broward County for hosting this meeting this year, and your hospitality is always very much appreciated. As these two counties come together, our water teams, in one room, we're the steward of the same aquifers, canals, coastal ecosystems, and when we solve problems jointly, all 4.5 million residents benefit from this. So I'd like to share some highlights with you all and about what's happened up in Palm Beach County this last year. So the C-51 reservoir phase 2 was fully funded. I was just out there last week and can tell you the construction is well underway. They're going to be finishing up. I believe they said by next year we will have both cells operational. So, and that's going to help create drought proofing for Palm Beach County. So another tool in the toolbox. Our advanced water purification system has broken ground. Green K Phase 2. This is going to be the first of its kind wastewater plant. It will, although it's not going to be wastewater to tap, it is going to produce water that is capable of being used in the system as potable water. It'll be creating an education center over there as well. So tremendous opportunity. And as we know, water is a precious commodity, and just taking wastewater and not having an opportunity to reuse it is a missed opportunity for us. We have $5.7 million in new water, alternative water supply grants in the county. Our record asset management was recognized by the Association of Metropolitan Water Agencies. And so we won an award, ISO 5500 certification as best in class. We have been proactive in our PFAS response after the EPA finalized the PFAS rule in April of 2024. 3 of our 5 plants today are immediately compliant, and optimization and capital upgrades for the remaining 2 are underway. The Lake Worth Lagoon restoration, we have continued to receive funding from the legislature, and we are targeting additional septic to sewer conversions and stormwater retrofits and habitat work in the lagoon. And let's see, our last May, our joint presentation on Palm Beach Broward components for the SERP, our Comprehensive Everglades Restoration Plan, mapped out 68 active features and confirmed that both counties are tracking the same milestones and funding windows. So these initiatives are collaborations and resilience. The C51 reservoir succeeds only if our utilities synchronize and take and return volumes. We speak together as one voice when we go to Tallahassee and to Washington, D.C., which is so important as a region. So as we move through today's agenda, I hope that we'll find some additional actions that we can work together on, and whether it's shared grant applications, PFAS treatment specs, or a unified outreach plan for reclaimed water. And I know our staffs are already comparing notes, so I really appreciate our staff's work and thank them. And I just thank you all for the great work you do each and every day and the spirit of partnership that makes South Florida, our water future, brighter than it's been in the past. So, thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Weiss. Again, I agree with everything he said about the strong partnership between the 2 counties, and it really is appreciated. I've chaired the water board here now, I think 8 years, 7 or 8 years, and it really, in my opinion, water is probably the single biggest issue facing South Florida. We either have too much or not enough. We are having and will have in the future problems with obtaining sufficient potable drinking water, and at the same time, we need to avoid being flooded, and we are going to be flooded. At this point, it's almost inevitable, and the reason, as we all know, and this we have the Army Corps here, which will describe it much better than I will, but South Florida, at least Broward County, much of Palm Beach, basically everything west of US 1 at one point was Everglades. And the Army Corps came along 40s and 50s. I think it may have continued, I'm not sure, into 60 or 61, but mostly the bulk of it was in the 50s, where they drained Broward County and large portions of Dade and Palm Beach through this canal system. It's important to understand the climate here in South Florida. Again, I'm not an expert on all 3 counties, but in Broward County, we have 2 official climates. It's either tropical rainforest or tropical monsoon. Either one of those means it rains a lot. And the problem is when it rains, no problem. You have the little canals that feed into the big canals operated by the Army Corps. The big canals flow out into the ocean. Actually, rivers are intracoastal, thence to the ocean, no problem. No problem as long as inland water is here and ocean water is here. However, since they're all gravity-fed, or mostly gravity-fed, I think we have 1 pump station in Broward. However, over the years, we're reaching the point where this inland is no longer a lot higher. We've already lost most of the capacity in the canals, not all of it, but most. But in, I don't know, 10 years, give or take, they're going to be like this. And by the way, in 15 years, ocean's going to be sending the salt water straight through our canals right into the Everglades. unless, and, with the saltwater intrusion will contaminate our well fields that haven't already been lost. Surprisingly, this isn't rocket science. We do know how to fix it. It's just expensive, really, really expensive. But we know how to fix it. We need really big, much taller salinity control barriers. We need big, giant, really expensive pumps. We're eventually going to need to put in either seawalls, berms, or something on the canals, because otherwise you can pump water, but unless you have higher banks, it's going to just flood everything along the canals. We know how to fix it, but getting it funded has been extremely difficult. Broward went and laid out $5 million from county GR funds to work, and I know we have the South Florida Water Management District here. I continuously thank them for how well they've worked with Broward and having agreed to share the cost, $5 million from SFWMD, $5 million from the county, for a study which, thank you, Army Corps has agreed to let us fund that study, so hopefully we can get into WARDA 2026. It's an incredibly ambitious schedule to do this, but I understand that as of now, we're still on track, but I'm hoping, because I'm not sure we can get this done, but I really am hoping we are, because it's such an ambitious and tight schedule. But we're going to have to do something, and if not, again, it's not my role as a government official to give investment advice, but I do give investment advice, and everybody on the Broward County Water Advisory Board has heard me say this repeatedly, as the South Florida Regional Planning Council. Invest in companies that make arcs and houseboats, because in South Florida we will need them, and by the way, bring your pets in at night so the alligators don't eat them, because we're carved out of the Everglades, and to the Everglades we will return without these canals being dealt with. And I just don't know that I think that we are going to be flooded, hopefully not too badly, and hopefully for only a couple of years. But that's if we make the 2026 WARDA bill. There's all of these other issues facing us. The rising ocean, we have our resilience issues, we have PFAS, we have the loss of well fields, we have, all of the flooding, which today is no longer just at king tides. All of these issues, which is why I say water is so important. You'll be hearing on a lot of these items. And before we move to the agenda, we have had a request from one of our local mayors who's on the water board to bring up another item. I've discussed this with co-chair Weiss, and we've agreed, as long as we discuss it briefly. I'd like to recognize Mayor Michelle Gomez from Tamarack, who has been, I've known Michelle for, I won't say forever, but for a very long time, and she's just been such a great mayor and partner. So,
Thank you.
Mayor Gomez, you're recognized, ma'am.
Thank you very much. I'm going to step straight on the third rail for a Friday morning. So we know that there has been a bill put in place regarding fluoride, something that all of our communities and water boards and county have been talking about. And on this Broward Water Advisory Board, we had discussed we were bringing it forth to the county to support keeping fluoride in our water. And I'm not really sure how far it's gone with the county, but know that there's now a bill saying that we're supposed to take it out. The city of Tamarack has our own water source, and we distribute water to Tamarack, and prior to this coming out, the city has put something out about the benefits of fluoride. And so I was just curious if, as water advisory boards, we were going to have some kind of position on this, whether it's to request there be a change, request there be a delay, request there be more support. I don't know. I'm not trying to put words into other people's mouths, even though you know I have very strong opinions about things. So that was what I wanted to bring up today and just ask for this conversation to be had, please.
First, let me tell you where we went in Broward. I carried that resolution to the county commission. At one of our county commission meetings, we had a room full of people ready to speak against it, but at the request of the county administrator at that point in time, legislation had already been introduced, and our lobbyists had said that it looked likely that it would pass. So we decided to postpone consideration of the bill, of the resolution, to see, because the legislature was already in session at the time that it reached the county commission. So we postponed that, and as our lobbyist predicted, it did pass, and the governor signed the bill like immediately. He's not signing most bills immediately, but this one he signed immediately. And as you know, I served in the legislature, House and Senate, for 20 years. I've seen the legislature make many mistakes before, and I think this is one of them. I have been on a panel with experts from across the state opposing this legislation. I believe the overwhelming consensus among the medical community, dental, medical, the AMA, the ADA, the pediatricians, Harvard Med, Johns Hopkins, all of the top medical schools, dental schools, overwhelmingly said, please don't do this. We need fluoride in the water. Having said that, I have taken an oath to, as have every elected official, to follow the law. And when it comes time for the county, I'll be voting I'll speak and say this is a horrible, horrible, horrible thing we've been forced to do, but I will follow the law because it's the law. Let me ask, first I'll ask Chair Weiss if he has any comments. You don't have to, and if not, we only have a couple of minutes to discuss this. I'll call on Commissioner Caggiano after Mayor Weiss, Commissioner Weiss.
Just to let you know, in Palm Beach County, it had not come up, although we were planning to have a discussion. It was going to be a discussion item for us in June or July. At this point, I share very similar remarks as you, Chair Geller. And, what I've asked, we had a very brief discussion on it at a meeting this week of our board. And so we're going to cancel our discussion because there's no point in having it. But what I did ask staff to do is reach out to our healthcare district and put together information to inform our residents, how do you make up for this? Where, how much fluoride do you need in and how do you, where do you get it from? And what the proper levels would be, so that people can take care of themselves, make decisions for their families. As we know, and as the research and literature has pointed out, that this has been a good thing for our children and their dental, their lack of cavities and so forth. They know, we have evidence that when it's been removed from the water, there's been an uptick of decay and so forth being found in the teeth. And we know the people that are hardest hit by this are lower income families and who can least afford to pay for dental care. And it's, I agree, I think it's been something we've had for a long time safely. And unfortunately, the research is clear that if you have too much of it, it can cause problems. However, the levels that were being utilized in our water systems never got close to those levels. So, too much of anything can be a bad thing. Even water, plain water, too much plain water can kill you. So, but it is what it is. This is where our legislature has gone, and we said earlier, this is, again, a preemption. Local communities should have an opportunity to determine what they want in their communities, but in this case, we've been overruled. So.
Commissioner Caggiano.
I was just going to ask, do we have an opportunity to be more strict? Because we can be more strict than the state, but this is a situation where we can't, we're totally got to take it out. We have no choice anymore?
They have passed legislation which the governor has signed
I know that,
forbidding us.
we just
Yes,
don't have any options anymore.
that's correct. Complete
So we're
preemption.
living in a time when science is fiction and fiction is science.
Yes. If you
okay.
have any questions, check the record of our, whatever Robert Kennedy is. And they just appointed a Surgeon General who's not a doctor, who is a holistic physician. I don't recognize much of this country, but it is what it is. And to just follow up on what Mayor Weiss was saying, the recommended level of fluoride is 7 parts per, 0.7 parts per million? I don't know, it's 0.7 per something. The studies that they have been referring to are 2 Chinese studies where the minimum level was, instead of 0.7, they were using it at 4 parts, which is about 6 times the thing. And both of those studies have been widely criticized for lack of scientific accuracy in their studies. They were self-reporting, not independent, things of that nature. They would not have withstood scientific scrutiny in this country. And it doesn't matter, once the blogosphere has made up their mind, they've made up their whatever passes for their mind. Mayor Gomez, in closing. Was there anyone else? If not, Mayor Gomez to close.
Well, I appreciate bringing it up, and I appreciate the comments. Part of me is not 100% happy in the respects that we're here to advocate. We fight them when the vacation rental rule was put in place. We're fighting against Live Local. We're fighting all these other things that they've done to pretend that the counties and the cities don't exist and that we shouldn't be here. Those of you who don't know me, I hate politics in it for what we're supposed to do, which is for the betterment of our residents and our communities. And so I am listening to what you're saying. I will say that I'm not exactly sure that I want to accept it, honestly, and that the cost to change, to do what is wanted of us, to then hurt our communities, which will only wind up hurting, again, those people who don't have the opportunity to really take care of themselves, and they have no choice. Our kids don't actually just go and decide that they're going to brush their teeth, right? Most kids are not sucking down a tube of toothpaste that has the fluoride in it that causes issues. We have to have our kids go to get dental care before they get to go to school. We do have kids who don't drink enough water. We have people who don't drink enough water. There's a lot in there that some of these costs that are going to be brought to bear over this item, I think will be more devastating for the ability to have to change it back and what we're doing, what's going to be done to our population from that. So while I hear that right now it's not a position to fight, if there should become a position to fight, I would support the advocacy of making sure that they understand the difference of what is being done, because they're still between today and the beginning of next session. Thank you.
And Mayor Gomez, I believe, I can't speak for the county commission, but we will probably in next year, when we put together a legislative agenda, which always asks the legislature to stop preempting and to give us back the ability to regulate, as you said, vacation rentals and all of these other things that they've taken away. I believe Broward County will probably put in our legislative package to repeal this law. I think it's a horrible, 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 terrible, bad, evil, I could go on, law. I'm just saying, as both an attorney, I've taken an oath, and as an elected official, I've taken an oath to follow. laws, even those I consider stupid, and I will try and probably put in our legislative agenda to repeal this, but until it's repealed, I have an
understand.
obligation to
I have those
follow.
oaths too, and I'm not saying that we should be, anarchy and say not to do it and put, dump all the fluoride we have in the water system just because we want to say no to you. I am happy to hear that maybe there'll be something that we can do to show our displeasure about the total overreach, about what we believe, whether some cities don't believe in it and some cities do, or the county, but that should be our decision for our residents based on the science that we believe is true. I know that there's some people in the room who don't believe it and are very happy with the bill, and good for them, and don't take that away from them. Just don't like being controlled. Thank you.
Thank you for bringing up this important item, Madam Mayor. At this point in time, as I said, the probably single biggest issue here in Broward County and parts of Palm Beach, some of your parts are higher than we are, and I'm not referring to drugs or anything. Just height. Okay, right. The building resiliency and integrating the CNSF project. Again, I've been working with the Army Corps for many years now. They have been doing a tremendous job. I've worked with, I think, 3 or 4 colonels now, and current commander in Jacksonville is Colonel Brandon Bowman, and I'd like to thank Colonel Bowman for being here today, and you're recognized, sir.
Start over. So thank you for this honor to be able to come here and speak today. And I learned quickly that in South Florida, you can count the passage of time in years and months. You can also count it in the passing of Army Corps colonels. I get reminded quite a bit, you're my 10th or 11th colonel I've seen come through, and it's always a little humbling when I get told that. But before I start into my slides, I want to answer the question that should be in your mind if it's not on your mind. Why is there a guy in camouflage clothing standing in front of you talking about resiliency or Everglades restoration or navigation or any other weird things that doesn't quite make sense why the Army is doing it? But it goes back a long time. So the Army would be celebrating its 250th birthday here in June, and that's how old the Army Corps of Engineers is. And back when our country was formed, we didn't have any way to produce engineers, and actually the first school in the United States that produced engineers was the United States Military Academy at West Point. And so when Congress started to get into these big civil works projects in 1824 with the passing of the Rivers and Harbors Act and the General Survey Act, the only engineers the nation had readily available was in the United States Army. So ever since then, for the last 201 years, the Army Corps of Engineers has diligently and proudly built a lot of the nation's large civil works projects, and we continue that on today. And even here in Jacksonville, the Army Corps has been in Florida since 1884, so 141 years. There's been an Army colonel proudly serving the state and the people of Florida. So, resiliency. I like to say it's a team sport. It starts down at the individuals. At your home, you need to have the disaster kits so you can survive those hurricanes and disaster events. Then moving up through the local, county, state, and up to the federal government, which really comes with FEMA and the Army Corps of Engineers. And as that's at a resiliency conference down in Miami earlier this week, and one of the speakers said that every dollar you put into resiliency now saves you $6 during the disaster event. So it's money well spent. But also, as you move up that triangle, the cost of what we're talking about escalates very quickly. So at the state and federal level, we're in the hundreds of millions of dollars, if not billions of dollars, for these projects. As in the last 201 years of civil works projects, our grandparents did all the easy projects. So now we are left with some of the truly challenging and difficult projects in order to advance the nation and also advance resiliency for a lot of our residents. So resiliency, it's all about project integration. So we have here in this area, we have several projects going on. We have the Central and South Florida Flood Resiliency Study, We have 7 coastal storm risk management projects. The Loosahatchee River watershed restoration being done by South Florida Water Management District. We have the Brevard County Water Preserve areas, C11, C9 impoundment, as well as the WCA 3A, 3B steeping management being done by the Army Corps of Engineers. And really with integration, it's the whole is greater than the sum of the parts. So all these resiliency projects have to be put together in a way that they build off of each other, and they make the whole system be more successful than they are as each of the projects. So that requires a lot of forward thinking. The CNSF system was authorized in the 40s. We built it in the 50s, 60s, and we actually was into the 70s until we actually finally completed the whole thing. So it took multi-decades, multi-generational, as also what we're seeing with Everglades restoration. In its 25th year this year, and we still got a couple of decades to go. It's going to be one of those other large generational type civil works projects. But how do we do that? It's communication. It takes the entire, again, team sport. It takes all levels communicating with each other, talking to each other about what it is you're seeing on the ground, what we're seeing coming in the future, and what would we have currently, what do we need to maintain and improve upon, since the CNSF system, several components are getting in the 50s and 60s and 70-year-old range. It's starting to come time for repair and replacement. So it's critical that everyone at all levels are communicating across all those little circles there you see, and sharing that technical data, and developing and implementing a system that is going to carry the people of Florida into the next several decades. So here it is, the Central and Southern Florida system. Again, you see there, it was first authorized in 48 and 54. Massive, massive project. In some sections, it's 70 plus years old. 2,200 miles of canals, 2,100 miles of levees and berms, 84 pump stations, and currently 778 water control structures. A vast system. And as you said, sir, you know, this was the Everglades that we're currently in. And this system performs very, very well, probably too well, right? And that's kind of why we have some water shortages. We do a lot of good work with moving that water and getting it out the tide. And so now with Central Everglades, it's about storing that water so we can maintain it on the landscape and actually use it for beneficial uses. But this project was mainly for flood control, drainage and water control. And by now moving that water to where it needs to be and getting it to the right spots, we can use it to prevent saltwater intrusion. Water supply for both agricultural, residential, industrial, as well as Everglades National Park needs some of that water to help maintain the park. It's also, by storing that water on the ground, we can get groundwater recharge to make sure we have that potable water going into the future, as well as in enhancing fish and wildlife in the area, saving the panther, and saving the Everglades and all the 70 plus species, endangered species that call the Everglades home. But also critical too is navigation in and around the ports and harbors, and also the C-44 and C-43 canals that connect across the Lake Okeechobee is also an important navigational waterway for folks. Then the big piece is also recreation. A lot of recreation happens there in those water conservation areas. But resiliency is all these projects need to be integrated. In the tactical army, we would call this defense in depth. So we start there on the coast with coastal storm risk management projects. You know, those beach renourishments that a lot of folks like to enjoy and see as recreation, but it's really there to protect and harden the coastline. And recently we've been seeing that the Back Bay area is the harder spot to defend against. It's easy to build a beach, but on the Back Bay, it's a little bit more challenging to protect those communities. Then moving a little bit further in, you have your inland flood risk management areas, which is mainly your CNSF system, which takes the water that does fall on the land and removing it to get it to not flood folks and get it to either storage or get it back out to tide, but ultimately trying to store that water so we can get beneficial use out of it. And then moving further inland, you have the ecosystem restoration, which you think of SERP, be able to store that water on the surface and get it to the Everglades and then get it down to like how Mother Nature intended, right? Move that water the way Mother Nature designed it, which is probably the best system, not the system that man created with all these canals, which created lots of more problems, which we're trying to rectify in these coming years. But here in the local area, we got lots of studies going on and lots of projects. You see those orange circles there. Those are the 7 beach projects, which we are maintaining as federal projects, which are really provide a lot of recreation, but the real purpose is to provide that coastal storm protection in the event of any hurricanes or storm surge coming across. And Florida has the most. I think we have a total of 28 right now in the state that the Army Corps of Engineers is maintaining, 7 right here on this map. And you see the blue diamonds are the big navigation projects, Port Everglades, Port of Palm Beach Harbor. Both of them are critical. And why would that be resiliency? But after a storm passes through, having those harbors that we can quickly open and get the economy back running, bringing in commerce and jump-starting the economy post-storm event or disaster event. Then you see there in that yellow is the CNSF resiliency study. It's a pretty large study, and as again, our grandparents did all the easy projects, so these studies are getting bigger and more expensive. The day we still have 3x3, and he's increased it to 4x5 for these studies, but even that really isn't enough to do some of these larger studies. So we have broken this study into 4 reaches, A, B, C, and D. And Reach A is being conducted as a 203 study by South Florida Water Management District, which is our biggest non-federal sponsor and a partner for very many years, and hopefully very many years in the future. Reach B is going to be done by using a federal grant. Reach C is a 216 study being done by the Army Corps of Engineers, which is further south. Reach D is to be determined, likely be incorporated in a future study moving forward. But on top of all that, we have lots of other things we have done in the recent times with Lake Okeechobee. The Herbert Hoover Dike has been rehabilitated, which allowed us to get the Lake Okeechobee System Operating Manual, LOSM, approved last year, which is currently allowing us to operate the lake in a more adaptive manner. The Zone D area, which is where we want to be in most of the time, is a much thicker layer that we can maneuver through. And currently the lake is in lake recovery mode, which is allowing us to draw the lake down for the ecological benefits of the lake. And so for most of LOSM, the one area that lost in LOSM was the lake. And we were able to get LOSM approved by putting in lake recovery, which allowed us to get through the NEPA process. And essentially will allow us to give the lake priority for the benefits of LOSM about once every 5 years, probably a little bit longer than that, because lots of criteria have to be met before we can even consider lake recovery. And this year was that Goldilocks year where everything started ticking green down the checklist for when we can even consider lake recovery. And right now the lake is in the low 11s and is, I think yesterday was 11.09 feet. I haven't checked it this morning to see where it's at. We're starting to see a lot of submerged aquatic vegetation returning to the lake, and we're starting to see a lot of those ecological benefits. And we're going to do a after actions review with everyone. So in the Army, I always like to do after the event's done, how do we perform? What could we have done better? We're going to make a very formal process with that to hear from all the stakeholders. What did you see? What went well? What could we do better in the future when the next time this is considered? Because the next time is going to be 5+ years down the road. And I want to make sure that Army Colonel, whoever that Army Colonel is not starting from square one, kind of where we were at, which is the first time we ever done lake recovery. So they can pull that out of the filing cabinet, blow the dust off of it, and read it and see what did we do well, what could we have done better, what were the stakeholders' concerns. But hopefully that next time we'll have a lot more components online with Everglades Agricultural Area Reservoir, some other projects online that will likely lessen those impacts. But currently here in the area, we don't have any back-based studies. So we're part of that layered defense. We already talked about the SERP. Navigation projects, again, we're working through Port Everglades, trying to build a deepen that harbor to make it bring in more commerce into the area. And also we also had working soon on the SEP operations increment 1.0, which is going to allow us to get some of the benefits from SERP, incremental benefits, start moving some additional water south out of the Water Conservation Area 3 and get it south of Tamiami Trail, which again is going to improve the ecosystem and the environment for the area. And again, all that does play into resiliency, be able to have Mother Nature act the way it is and take some of that additional capacity out of the canal instead of pushing the tide, get it back into Mother Nature where we can get that water and actually be able to use it for the folks in the area. And I think that's my last slide. Yes. Do you have any questions?
I'm sure there will be many. Thank you, Colonel, for your presentation. It was excellent. Before I know I have a series of questions, but first let me ask Chair Weiss if he has any.
Well, let me just ask if any of our members would like to go first.
Well,
If not, then
I had a bunch of questions.
I have
but
some
was
too,
gonna
but
let you- why don't
I
you go
did, I
first?
want to allow
Okay.
the folks who made the drive down here. Go ahead,
A
Dee Dee.
question. Hi, Dee Dee Halpern. I'm on the town council in the town of Juno Beach, up near Jupiter, and I'm wondering what work was in that orange circle that you were doing up there?
So with beach CSRM projects, it is about building the beach out to the profile that our engineers say we should be at for coastal defense. And then the big one is the berm, building the berm up so that when the storm comes in, that will break down the storm surge and prevent it from going as far as inside. But one thing with that is that every storm that passes, it takes a little bit off the beach. And hopefully it never gets into the berm to eat the berm away, but it's a constant fight with Mother Nature of protecting the beach. So after every storm goes past through, we have send folks out to do surveys to see post storm what was the result and if there is any need to do any kind of emergency repairs to the beach. But it's there for defense.
So is there an upcoming renourishment project up there? If you know. If you don't, that's fine.
I'll have to take it as a do out. I'm looking at my notes right now. There's 28 of these, and it's hard for me to keep on top of all of them.
Okay. You can always follow up.
Yeah, I'll have to give you a follow up with that.
All right. You have it? Okay. So, Colonel, first off, thank you very much. Thank you. First off, thank you for your service and those of your team and this presentation. LOSUM is for Palm Beach County is something that, we expressed concern for, through the whole process. And as you've noted, lake level now is at a little over 11 feet, and we didn't have as much rain as we normally do. And I guess just expressing, Lake Okeechobee is not only a resource for the Everglades, but it's a resource for our people and our agricultural areas. And concerns that we have, and certainly we appreciate you all, the flexibility you all have, but the concerns, and I'm glad to hear that this is a once in a 5-year plan, but the concern is if this happens to be that year when we have a very dry, wet season, and we end up also with a dry season, we're going to be in potentially a world of hurt. And is there a plan to help us? Or do you guys have a plan B?
So we can't control Mother Nature, but we do track Mother Nature very, very closely. And we do a weekly water call with my folks to they go over the system and what we're seeing in forecasting. So NOAA has recently changed the forecast for the season to above average for Florida. I know we're still in drought conditions. It's really going to come down to when does Mother Nature decide to turn on the wet season, and that's something we're watching very, very closely. We have been modeling the lake for a very long time for lake recovery, and my folks had them pull our forecast back in January to see where are we at today with regards to what we said in January, and our models were very, very accurate. With that said, they're most accurate during the dry season because there's less unknowns with rain coming in. But right now it's going to be a question of when does Mother Nature start coming in and how much rain do we get. If it is a dry season, yes, that's going to present challenges for us moving into the future. But forecasts show from NOAA that it should be above average wet season coming up. And we're really close to the South Florida Water Management District. When we make our release schedules, we reduced releases to 0 out the east. To the west, we dropped down to 500. Right now, the major pull is out of the south with the farmers in the agricultural area. They're pulling the most amount of water. If the modeling is showing right now, we will, if the rain season comes a little bit later, we'll probably dip down below the water shortage line, but that line is going to start climbing as we get to the wet season, and we will follow it behind it and then pop out north of it again later in a few months down in the season. But again, it's Mother Nature. We're watching it incredibly closely to make sure that we are managing the lake appropriately. And also, it just could be one hurricane could come in, park over top of Lake Okeechobee, and we could be back up to 17 feet before we know it. We acknowledge your concern, the concerns of folks in Florida who rely on Lake Okeechobee for drinking water, and we're watching it very closely.
All right. I appreciate that. I guess, and hopefully your weather forecasters are right, but it's a concern of ours, and I hear from our constituents, and so I appreciate the opportunity to share that with you. And then the second thing I wanted to ask you about, recently, the last couple of years, we've had this shared adversity for the Lake Worth Lagoon with the releases. And the amount of water that we can push into the lagoon is, I would say, de minimis as it relates to the other outlets. And we did have some success in sending it down. I think it was down to the down by Boynton Beach Inlet. The releases were sent down there, so it's much closer to the outlet. But when they come in through the C-51, we're 8 miles from one inlet, 10 from the other, and that water just gets into our lagoon. And we're doing we've made lots of investments over the years, and thanking previous administrations, previous legislatures, and previous county commissions for making that happen. But then we destroy that with these releases. Is there any thought to say, it really is de minimis in terms of what can be discharged through those outlets, and say, it was an interesting way to see if we could look at it, but it really doesn't change the facts, and so why are we damaging a water body that doesn't help with those in lowering the lake level?
That's why we want to do this, being the first year ever doing lake recovery. So we're going to do this after action review. We're going to listen to the stakeholders. We're going to hold public comments to gather all that in. And one of the questions I'm asked my folks to answer is the benefits that we thought we were going to see with lake recovery that was in LOSUM. Did we see them? Did we, by getting benefits in the lake, was there an effects elsewhere that negated it? So we're going to collect all that. We want to hear from everybody. But, I know under LORS 08, it was people who said shared adversity. With LOSUM, vast majority of the time, it's going to be 0 releases to the east. And but with LOSUM, it's shared benefits, because like the one area it does lose on LOSUM is the lake. Hands down, it was losing. And it was losing so bad that there was no way we were going to get LOSUM passed through the NEPA process. The only way it got in was by putting lake recovery into the plan. It allowed us to take lake ecology into account, and it allowed LOSUM to clear that hurdle. And making that decision for lake recovery, it was a hard one for me to make. I told Rivers Coalition about a month ago in Stewart that was probably the hardest decision I made in my military career. I sent people into combat and down dangerous routes and looking for IEDs in Iraq, but I understood what that mission was, and it was pretty easy. We trained for it, but lake recovery being the first time we've ever done it, not really knowing, we modeled, we had lots of models. We ran 500,000 models for LOSUM, but doing it for real for the first time, seeing what it's going to do. And, also with LOSUM, we just passed LOSUM. Everyone's excited about it, and the very first thing we're going to do is do lake recovery, which is kind of counter to what a lot of folks want to see with the lake. So it weighed heavily upon me. But ultimately, it was, I believe, the right choice. The data we had going into it was good data. our modeling was tracking well. So I think we had good information. We can disagree about the decision that I made, but we did have good data, and it was necessary to for lake recovery to be in LOSUM, or otherwise we never would have gotten LOSUM. We would still be arguing and fighting over what the modeling would be, or what quick courses of action we would have done. But again, we are going to ask all the communities to tell us what you saw with lake recovery. We're going to put that into an after action review, and maybe we got to go back and look at lake recovery. How do we do it? Was it the right answer? Is there a better way of doing it? Because as EA Reservoir comes online in 2034, we're going to have to go back to LOSUM and redo the plan all over again to incorporate those new features in. And we would definitely want to learn from everything we've done in the past, past decade with LOSUM, and make it better water control plan. And hopefully get those releases from the lake even lower. So if we want to do lake recovery, is there a way that we can utilize the reservoir to help pull that water down? But yeah, it was probably one of the hardest decisions I ever had to make. And again, for me, I'm never going to say, you're never going to hear me say shared adversity, because with LOSUM, it's about shared benefits, because LOSUM is such a better plan than LORS. It allows us to take the lake higher and store it, but when that lake gets higher, it is a negative to the lake. And by having that additional submerged aquatic vegetation in the lake, it cleans the water. It does a really good job. And one of the boxes that the tick for lake recovery is there 11,000 acres of SAV on the lake? And that box was checked green because there was under 3,000 acres on the lake. And FWC, was speaking with them yesterday, they've been seeing thousands of acres of new SAV starting to take root in the lake. Again, we won't know the full benefits. We're going to probably have to wait a year for that grass to grow and to do their surveys and tell us what it looks like. But it looks like we're getting a lot of benefits. How much? I don't know. We're going to have to use science to document that, and again, hear from the stakeholders. What was the impact for fishing? What was the impact on recreation, on the economy? That's what I don't know. And that's what we need your guys' help for, is to show us what was the impacts of LOSUM and lake recovery on your community.
Thank you. Thanks, Chair. Anyone else?
Okay. No, right, I will get you. Okay. Colonel, I've got about 48 questions, but I'll narrow the list. First, Port Everglades, we have been trying to deepen that for close to 30 years now. And the last problem I recall was we were going to damage like 8 corals, and we needed to replace the 8 corals we would damage with 30 million, or I've exaggerated the numbers, but the order of magnitude is pretty close. Do you have any update as to whether or not we're ever going to be able to actually deepen the port?
I can't make any promises to you. So yes, I'm very well aware of the Port Everglades. It's about a question of the number of corals impacted. Our number of corals impacted is significantly less, orders of magnitude less than what Department of Interior is currently thinking that those impacts are, and their numbers being driven by what occurred during the deepening of Port Miami.
We're much more careful than Miami is.
Well, the Army Corps did that one too. So, but we have new techniques, and we're trying to get them to align with us, more closely to us. If we get to if their number sticks, it will probably be prohibitive for there to be federal interest in Port Everglades. Mm-hmm. However, we are working very closely to try to get them more closer to our number. We just had the acting assistant secretary of the Army for Civil Works down 2 weeks ago, or maybe last week. I can't remember. The weeks are blurring together for me now. And look at the Everglades, but it was one of the topics I raised with him to make him aware that Port Everglades is an area we're trying to get through with the Department of Interior. And the question is going to come down to the number of corals. Our leadership at South Atlantic Division is also aware of it. They've been engaging with their counterparts to try to get this addressed and move forward. We have not given up on this. We're fighting for this. We feel that the Army Corps' position is the right one. I think we're at 800,000-ish corals impacted. And And Department of Interior is in the millions. And if we're at that level, then the ability to
millions.
mitigate it is just cost prohibitive.
Thank you. Secondly, I think that the Everglades restoration is like the largest engineering project in the world, or,
Ecosystem restoration project, I would say, in the galaxy.
okay. If we don't fix the canal system that I described with the higher salinity control barriers, et cetera, I see no way of avoiding massive saltwater. We're talking 10 to 15 years, but it's going to take years to fix. I think we're going to undo everything that we've been doing by massive amounts of salt water from the ocean flooding into the Everglades. Does anybody realize this? And is this helping to prioritize the salinity control barriers and pumps that we so desperately need?
Well, I think that's really probably two questions. So with the Everglades, by getting the water flowing down the Everglades, that will push back the saltwater intrusion. That's what fights the saltwater coming in. We have lots of projects with the BBCW. It's about taking the water we already have, putting it in the spreader canals, getting it to flow across the wetlands, rehydrating them, and instead of having point discharges into the tide, spreading it across the landscape, and then pushing back that saltwater intrusion. Then the saltwater and then the salinity control structures, yes, and that's why we're working very closely with our partner in South Florida with the restudy to see where we can get better with those control structures. Is it moving it? Is it making them higher? It is definitely a challenge. And during Hurricane was Milton out on the West Coast, they had this Southwest Florida Water Management District. One of their salinity control structures, they had actually even welded a 3-foot section on top of it. And during the height of that storm surge, it was even overtopping that. So it's definitely a problem, and it's something that we're looking at as well as South Florida with these studies. We even have a comprehensive Central and Southern Florida flood resiliency study that's going to look at the entire CNSF system. It was authorized. Again, we talked about studies are getting really expensive, and it's going to be kind of cost prohibitive to do these studies. I'm not sure how we're going to get the funding to do that large of a study. They'll probably make us break it up into smaller chunks. But again, we're going to have a massive study to relook at the whole system that we put into place in the 40s, 50s, 60s, and 70s, and see where we're going to go with in the future.
And my final 3 questions are all on funding. So I'll just tell you what all 3 of them are, and understanding that you're not a congressman or a senator, so you're only going to be guessing. Do you see, with the way current administration is going, funding issues or funding cutbacks and therefore funding issues on the canals that we've been discussing, the beach renourishment? I've heard some discussion that they're going to just stop beach renourishment. And finally, with cutbacks to NOAA, is that going to be affecting what you do? So they're all funding questions, but those 3, I can repeat them if you want.
No, and for the Army Corps of Engineers, we can't go to Congress and lobby for money. All I can do express to Congress is capability. So I can say I can do X millions, billions of dollars in capability in a year, and as it floats up to each echelon above me, they'll modify that to what they think is appropriate. Goes to OMB for the president's budget. They'll then modify it and pass it over to Congress. So I have very, very little control over budget. What I will say is you and all your residents and constituents, they have the greatest impact for budget. Being your own advocate for your communities of what you see as important is absolutely critical. And when you express that to your representatives up in DC, we will get asked back down to us, provide impact statements, provide updated costs and schedule, and what we see as what are the effects if this does get done or doesn't get done. We provide that to members of Congress, and we've went the exercise several times in the last month already with requests for information from Congress. But I have very little control over the budget. I see what we sent up, and I wait to see what comes back down But again, all I can really express is my capability of what my district can do based on my workforce and workload that I have. But everyone sitting here and all your constituents have the greatest impact by being the advocate for your community's needs.
Thank you, Colonel. Councilmember Horlin, followed by Commissioner Caggiano.
Very quickly, Colonel Moen, the senator did cover my question. It was about funding, but I want to make a comment. We have seen a lot of colonels through all of these meetings, South Florida Regional Planning Council, Water Board. I've never seen anyone give its thoughtful and detailed answers to our questions, and it's really evident that you care about the work you're doing, so I just wanted to thank you.
Thank you for that.
Thank you. I join in her remarks. Commissioner Caggiano.
I want to follow up on the funding, but in a different way. Do you still believe, with the drastic cuts in personnel and money to NOAA, that you're going to be able to get the timely information and the correct information in the future? Not just someone just throwing something out there because I got to give it to you, but actually having the right people doing the right job so we can get the right numbers.
Yeah, I've not talked with folks and know I really can't comment on how many folks they have or what they need, but I do know with weather in South Florida Water Management District has their own meteorologists, which we rely on very, very heavily for a lot of our products because they look at just South Florida, and they're really good at that forecast and looking at it. NOAA is just the federal standard for how we review it. I guess this year with hurricane season, I kind of tell of how accurate those reports are. And across the government, we've all taken some reductions of personnel. In my district, we lost about 111 folks that taken the deferred resignation program, and it will have impacts across all aspects of the federal government. We'll get through it, and we're working through mitigation and bridging plans, how we're going to bring on additional, probably put some service contracts out to help us with some of the engineering aspects. It will probably slow down some stuff. We're going to do everything we said we're going to do. Just some things this year might not be right now. Might have to wait a little bit. We have to reprioritize our focus, and we're do the work Congress has asked us to do.
Again, thank you
So
for your
we
service,
throw
and thank
it
you
out.
again for your answer. That's a just proof answer, but as a real answer. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Colonel. Mayor Gomez.
Thank you. You had brought up something about where the biggest strength to help you be able to be heard because you can't ask for money directly. If we were to ask you or some member of your team to go with us to a meeting with one of our representatives, is that inappropriate, or would that be something that would move it along a little bit?
Yeah, we have to walk a fine line. We can't advocate or be seen as lobbying. We can provide you with facts, right? We have cut sheets for every project. We have estimates of how much we think it's going to cost. We can provide that to you and arm you with our facts and figures that we have, which are the same ones we provide to members of Congress.
I think it just, sometimes government is really slow. Sometimes it's like this. So that was why I was just curious if, heading up to DC in June, we can kind of move some things along. But you've made some comments about the projects and stuff. Every bad decision is based on the best evidence that you have at the time that you're doing it. And not all decisions are bad. They just don't have the exact outcomes that we hope for, and we learn from them. So thank you for trying. Thank you for all you're doing. And I don't see things bad. Things are just take time. And people don't like time because they want the answer yesterday. So thank you for all that you do. Thank you for your whole team of all that you do. And in general, thank you for your service.
Thank you.
Thank you. Colonel, I can tell you that, again, having been through a lot of colonels, I've rarely heard so many compliments for his remarks. So thank you. You've given an excellent presentation and answered as best you can on issues, and I think we all appreciate how excellent your presentation and remarks were. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Our next item is our former staff from our Broward County Water Advisory Board until she was poached by the South Florida Water Management District. Dr. Carolina Moran, Chief District Chief of District Resiliency for the South Florida Water Management District. Carolina, great to see you again. It's always a pleasure. You're recognized, ma'am.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Senator Geller. Welcome. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for inviting me here today. I'm actually stepping in for my executive director, Drew Bartlett. He is out of town today and could not be here in person. He asked me to apologize. We prepared this presentation together last time, so I'll try to fill his shoes here. I also want to just say that we're coming from a very good week with a lot of engagement in this specific projects. I think it's the third day we are together. And it's good because I'm seeing a lot of those important priorities being aligned and the conversation moving on a good direction, which is very important, especially now. So we have been, hopefully we continue on the same momentum that we are, but certainly a lot of key conversations happened this week. So I will start by just jumping into our resiliency plan. We have been doing extensive work at South Florida Water Management District in this field of resiliency and trying to understand vulnerabilities from the CNSF system as a whole and compiling this document that we are now on the 5th year. It's ongoing right now, the update. I have here the sequence of the plans for those 4 past years. And we are excited because we do have completed what we call the flood protection level of service for the majority of the urban areas in South Florida, our 16 counties. And we are really getting to the point that we have a more comprehensive document. It's not there yet, but it's very close to a comprehensive document for us to at least have a picture of what do we really need here in this South Florida region and in those 2 counties. So right now we are updating the document. The relevance for this year is because we're going to stop doing every year. So we have done year after year for the 5 initial years, but we're going to space out. We're really trying to produce a document that is more elaborate and more comprehensive this year. Therefore, we organize some workshops early on in February to really get early input on those projects that we have on the plan, the new projects that we are bringing to the plan, incorporate comments from the local partners. We have been implementing this plan with true collaboration with the local government. So it was a great experience to have the ability to sit early on and receive input through all those workshops. We also were hoping to align more and more with how we are looking at these projects and why we are aligning those projects with the statewide Resilient Florida efforts. The state now has a statewide vulnerability assessment, a lot of information that was provided through the local vulnerability assessments, and we overlap in a lot of efforts. So we did extensive coordination. The state was in all 4 workshops. They talk about the tools and the processes and how they are seeing this, and we were able to kind of align with them on those efforts as well. So over 200 people attended in person. We organized 4 of them from the Lower East Coast, Upper East Coast, Southwest Florida, and 1 in the Upper Kissimmee Basin. We have a summary of those workshops here. I'm linking the PDF if you want to take a look later. But just again, to reinforce the importance of this early collaboration, coordination, and how we need to be able to continue to align agendas, to be able to have one voice, and to be able to prioritize the critical projects that we need in the region. We are still open for comments. We receive a significant amount of comments during those workshops. We are incorporating them in the draft version. We're going to publish this draft version on May 28 at the upcoming Resilience Coordination Forum. And we're going to open again then for the public comments until June 25th. The final submission is September 1st. And you can send submissions to an email I will provide at the end. We are still updating the plan, but the good news is that we are also stepping into the implementation of a lot of the projects that we started a few years ago. So those are just some of the photos that we have of ongoing efforts, construction efforts that we have right now on the projects that we have on the plan. And I'm going to highlight 2 here today. The first one is the self-preservation mode. Again, 2 projects under construction. This project focuses on improving the coastal structures. All the discussions we are having here about how those structures operate, limitations they have today, when we have surge, risks of overtopping, and the most important issue that we have is the risk of the structure being overtopped by a surge and being locked in a closed position or inoperable during right after the event. So before we step into the major refurbishment replacement of those structures, we are beginning into a few of those already. But before we step into that, and knowing that it takes time to be able to finalize design and initiate construction and construct, this project allows us to do the small fixes. It's the short-term fixes. We got Resilient Florida funding for that. We have a total of 18 to 20 structures that are part of the scope, different types of enhancements, short-term fixes. But we have right now completed the 90% construction of a component that is the main component, which is a steering well component that allows us to be monitoring and take control of the structure more efficiently. That means we don't need to depend on the person going there to turn on and off equipment. That is a critical piece. During Irma, we sent person too early because we couldn't do it during high tides, and we locked those structures open, and the surge came to the other side, so a few of them were not needed to be there. So we want to be able to operate the longest possible. This is the ability for us to operate. We're going to have flood proofing of electronic mechanical components. We are also going to have, we're going to increase the top of the gate with some plates that are going to be added. So moving into construction, we have an estimated time for completion next year, 2026 for this project. And we prioritize a few structures in Broward, Palm Beach, and I believe we have one in Miami, Broward, and I believe we have one in Palm Beach. I will confirm. In Palm Beach, definitely the Corby Levee project. This is another project funded with Resilient Florida funding. Up to now, we have been able to construct Section 1 to Section 4 of the project. About 6,000 linear feet of the levee have been substantially completed. We're initiating Section 5 right now. That we have a telemetry component that was negotiated with Palm Beach County that is also under implementation. And the estimated construction date, those two grants are in the same timeline, June next year. Okay, I talk about a plan, a set of projects, some under construction, but I want to talk a little bit about how we get to those projects. And we do that to a very robust program that we have in the agency. We are very proud. It's more than a decade that we have this flood protection level of service program. And we go basin by basin, and we assess all the vulnerabilities that we have been discussing here. What are the possible scenarios in terms of sea level rise, surge, rainfall event, extreme rainfall events, groundwater levels that we know are so tight here too and so important to be considered, antecedent conditions. And based on those future scenarios, we anticipate what are the infrastructure needs that we need to prioritize in the system. So we did that basin by basin, and we used that to really prioritize the sequence of the investments that we need. So the basins that are now showing in red here were the priority basins when we start this program. They are all completed. We are really happy to share that we are completed. Palm Beach County was also completed this year. I'm going to share some details with you now. And really, in terms of the most dense urban areas, I believe the St. Lucie and Martin that are the ones that are going to be completed next year are really the last one pending, and we have a few more. But again, really, the dense areas are fully covered now. So focusing on Palm Beach and Broward, in 2021, we completed the FPLOS for 9 Broward County basins. Most of the data came because the Broward was also working on advancing the future conditions models here, and we were able to leverage a lot of that, which expedites the effort. So we completed that in 2021. We completed a phase 1 for C8 and C9 basin. The C9 basin has a portion in Broward in 2021 as well, and then phase 2 in 2023. The phase 2 is the adaptation strategy planning, so already thinking and simulating the solutions for the basin. And then we completed Eastern Palm Beach County, March this year. It's fully published. I have here the links for you. So the models and the reports are available into the statewide model management system website. The link is here. Anybody that needs to do a vulnerability assessment or do additional, watershed master plan, any additional stormwater analysis, those models are very useful. We have a series of consulting firms that are doing local assessments that are telling us how efficient they were when they start with this model and build on top of that as needed. But anyway, you can have access to all the data and the models from this portal. The final report is also linked here, and the report to all those projects are also linked here on the third link on the website. I'm going to bring a quick overview of the level of service results for Eastern Palm Beach County, just because this is the latest and greatest. It was just published, so I'm going to give this slide very quickly here. Basically, we have 6 performance metrics. I'm going to talk about 3 here today. Performance metric number 1 is when you have canal overtop. So we look at the canal level, we simulate current, future conditions, and we see, do we have any overtop? What is the vulnerability there? So we can see here that in general, the blue bars, we have for the L8, C51, C51 East and West, C16, C15, and C17. We have in general a good level of service to some of them, but we do see here on the C15 East basin, for instance, that it's less than 25. What that means is we designed the system to handle a 25-year event, which is a 4% chance. And when we have a 10, it means we need to do some enhancement to at least bring the system to what we was designed for. So C51 basing on the canal profile performance metric, we understand that we need some enhancement. C17 is even lower. It's being rated right now as a 5-year event. And this is existing conditions, not yet modeling future conditions. The performance metric number 5 is when we look at overland flooding. So what are the areas that we have flooding? What are the properties that are being flooded? Those are the green bars. And in general, we are seeing 25 for the current conditions in Palm Beach. And then we have PM6, which is related to the duration of the flood. We also don't want the water standing there. But in general, we have, again, good levels of service, but for LA and C51 West are the ones that are underperforming under current conditions. When we look at future conditions, I'm not going to detail here, but of course we see the significant reduction in all those 3 performance metrics, meaning that the system with the 2-3 feet of sea level rise, this is a 3 feet of sea level rise scenario, we see a drastically decrease on these performance levels that we have for the system. I have this in a map view as well. So basically, we wanted all those basins to be green. Green is the 25-year level of service. So, and what we are seeing here is under current conditions, we have a number of basins that are yellow, orange, and red. And under a 2 feet sea level rise scenario, on the right here, we see a significant number of basins turning into red. This is the overall level of service. That doesn't mean the entire basin is under a low level of service, but when we reach a threshold, critical areas inside the basin are under this risk. And everything is red means even a 5-year event, 20% chance event, we are seeing flooding risks that are being documented on those basins. So, okay, we have plan, we have some projects, we have some assessments, but we also need, of course, to start getting into funding and also understanding that a lot of those improvements that we need to the system, we need to develop in partnership with the Army Corps. So we started the CNSF flood resiliency study back in 2021-22, and we have been trying to advance this assessment. It's similar to what we have been doing already in the district, but then under all the federal umbrella, all the following all the plan formulation processes to be able to make sure we cross all the requirements, all the boxes, and of course access federal appropriations for those projects that are expensive, and we certainly need the funding coming from the federal Army Corps partnership as well. So we decided to break, and I think Colonel Bowman already talked about this. In a quick glance, we have a map here. The regional area for the study was this large area all the way from Palm Beach to Miami-Dade. We broke it in 4 areas. Red is Reach A. I'm going to talk about this. We are making significant progress under the CNSF Section 203 authorization in Broward. Reach B is FEMA hazard mitigation program. We do have a hazard mitigation under the ex-BRIC umbrella with FEMA to develop. We are completing the design for those 3 structures. We are submitting what we call an environmental historical preservation package to FEMA next week or in 2 weeks. So we basically completed all the 3 projects, and we initiated the 4-way consultation with the Army Corps. Reach C is the 216 study. The regional authorization is now focusing on the Miami basins, and we have a future authorization coming up for the Reach D. So I'm going to talk quickly about the Section 203 study. So this is the area for this Reach A, Section 203. We have 9 managed basins in the area. We have primary canals that are identified here. Those are the primary canals we are looking at, and tied to each of those primary canals are the coastal structures that are part of this study. I have a link here in this page that also lets us access the latest and greatest information and the status of the project, public meetings, and all the information that is there. We are doing this study under special authorization, which is what we call 203 authorization, meaning that the district takes control of the development of the major reports for this study and work in close coordination with the headquarters. So we go for the approval directly with the headquarters, but we have two important agreements with the Jacksonville district. So it's a federal activities agreement and a technical assistance agreement. We have all of those signed pending one signature, but we have all of those on those activities that are already happening, and we have the support from the Jacksonville district on all those efforts that are needed for the study. I know Senator Geller mentioned that Broward County provided $5 million for this study. FDP also provided funding. Those are not small endeavors. We are all talking about the amounts of funding needed even from the planning phase. So thanks to the support from the county, we also could accelerate this study. And we have a series of consulting contracts that are required to be able to support us. That we do a lot of work in-house, but we are fully dependent on help from consultants as well. We hosted we reached a really important milestone on April 29. We hosted this public workshop here in Broward County. In this workshop, we presented what we call an initial array of alternatives, the results of this initial array. So we run all the models. We formulated seven alternatives. We share the results for all of those 7 alternatives. And we start talking about how we're going to assess that. So there is what we call comprehensive benefits, meaning we're going to focus on the flood damages to properties as the main driver for how we formulate the plan, but we also look at social economic benefits. We are looking at environmental associated benefits in this basin, and also regional economics. So we presented all the criteria that we're going to use to be able to assess that. And then we also have a draft final array of alternatives. So how we're going to step into combining this initial array of alternatives into a final selected plan. And we have here, I'm going to share 3 maps quickly on what we are thinking in terms of what are this final array of alternatives. Very important, we have public comments open right now until May 14 for this phase of the study. We all know we are moving on a very fast pace, so getting your comments now is critical. We are going to step into the final array and we're going to run the results. We're beginning some of those initial setup of the data and everything, and your input is key, and it's key now. We might not be able to incorporate future comments as we want to be able to target the WARDA 2026. So those are the tentative final array of alternatives. We set up 3. Alternative A, B, and C. I'm not going to provide too many details, but we have here basically a set of structures and a combination of structures that we are going to be using as part of the final array. We have maps that were presented to Broward, and all the presentations are already on the website. Project schedule. As I mentioned, major milestone just achieved here on April 2025. We're going to have a tentative selected plan, recommended plan, in August 2025. And again, we aim for the June 26th WARDA 2026. I'm not going to leave without just making a quick reference. All of these efforts are done based on very robust science and technical assessments that we do using our data and other partner data available to really fully inform those future scenarios. This is what we call our water and climate metrics, and I also have a quick call here for the wet and king tide season preparation. We have a series of tools focusing on what is happening in terms of flood vulnerabilities, flood observations. It's very important that we have this fully documented to continue to justify those investments that are needed here. Resilience Coordination Forum, we're going to share all of that. Upcoming next one is May 28, as I said, the draft 2025 plan update. This wet season tools and preparedness. We're going to have an update from the Florida Flood Hub on an initiative. We're just starting this statewide ocean atmospheric regional climate model, and another update on the CNSF flood resiliency studies. With that, thank you. I'm open for questions.
Thank you, Dr. Moran. We really are running short on time. Are there any pressing questions? If not, thank you, Dr. Moran.
Thank you.
Our next presentation, and Dr. Moran. I again wanted to say how wonderful a partner the South Florida Water Management District has been, so thank you for that. Our next presentation is Palm Beach County Water Resources Initiative, Paul Linton. Mr. Linton, thank you for being here
Hello.
today. You're recognized.
Yes, I was requested to give a little bit of legislative update, which I was
Great.
provided this information by our Ed Chasen. So I'm going to go through this. I'm not going to read everything on it, but we'll go through the highlights to keep the pace going pretty quickly.
Thank you, sir.
Legislative did not adjourn. They extended the session, so they're going to be coming back in, and they'll be extending through June 6th. And
Move
they're
that they adjourn, sine die.
Yeah, they
No, just-
basically extended. So they're going to focus on the taxation, and on the focus of the budget will be the Senate's priority on legislation, including economic programs and infrastructure for the rural communities. So the biggest thing kind of out there that we're worried about from Palm Beach County, or one of the things we're worried about, is the property tax language, and they're going to focus on this part of it and look at these several different items to reduce the burden, quote unquote, burden of the taxes. And so this is the list of what they're going to look at. There was going to be
Members, try not to get sick and throw up while you're reading this.
Yeah, you might want to read this bit by bit because it's kind of hard. It's a little frightening. Bills that passed. Governor, they passed, and the governor signed the fluoride bid, which we already talked about. There are several bills about emergency. There's a bill on the State Park Preservation Act, which will provide stronger language against park being added, like commercial properties. You've got the utility relocation, so the communications like Comcast, those have a more of a different process for and more authority to make them relocate. Then there's for those people who, like in the intercoastal anchoring vessels, they spoke that issue. Condos, they gave some clarification on that, on the process for doing those reports on the structural integrity and then following up with the assessments. Let's see. Then for our Palm Beach counties, they provided some language on local building officials. They provided some clarity on mitigation banks and flexibility for that. And then they had an interesting one on requiring flood risk and flood damage disclosures. Bills that died. Some of them I'm very happy for their death. They try to change the self and immunity caps, the affordable rent details. Biggest one was the study to elimination of the and replacement of property taxes, which kind of morphed into that previous slide. And then the redevelopment, local option for taxes, waste incineration prohibition, and prohibited governments and contracting. So all this is here. Please read it at your leisure or ignore it as you choose. That's the update. Any questions?
Nope.
All right.
Thank you.
Let's get, where are they hidden here? On the bottom. On the bottom? That one?
I don't know which one is your next one.
RJ, this one, yeah.
Just hit that.
Yes, sir.
Yep.
Thank you.
Okay.
Uh-oh.
And, sir, how many other presentations do you have?
I am going to just summarize these two real quick. okay?
Terrific. Thanks,
So-
because we're running short. Thank you, sir.
Yeah. Vulnerability assessments, our group, the Office of Resilience, have been very busy. They have almost completed the vulnerability assessment. They are in the process of outreach for it. They're also in the process working with our IT staff to take the maps, the very complicated and detailed maps, and make them available through the GIS so you can zoom in on your own property and take a look at it. This presentation has a whole lot of flow charts on those details. I'm going to skip that in the interest of time. But the big outreaches are, we're finishing up the RVA and we're doing the RAP. So we're identifying projects that we can move forward with. There's about 30 projects ranging from everything as simple as a lift station, strengthening and hardening, to more larger projects that involve seawalls, and then the other ones are focusing on some heat mitigation stuff like tree planting and that. The other thing is we are working with several municipalities to begin their vulnerability assessments through the funding through Resilient Florida grants. And I think I have a third presentation, but I think I can pass on that in the interest of time. But I was just going to speak to the we'll post it, but it's a presentation on the previous SERP projects and all those water supply projects that were used to free up water, capture runoff, and then make that water available to meet the water supply demand so you could free up water from Lake Okeechobee for the Everglades. I'd encourage people just to look through those on a one-on-one basis, but I'm not going to drag everyone through given the time frame. Good.
Okay, yes, thanks, sir. And did you say that you are going to post that?
Yeah,
Or if you, can you email that to both of our staff?
Yes, I
and
will. They're
they'll
relatively small.
distribute that.
Okay.
Great.
Okay.
Thank you, sir. We appreciate it. And we're almost catching back up. Not quite. Dr. Gerardo, you're up.
Okay, I promise to move at a quick speed. So just providing update on mainly the resilient strategy that you all have seen a bit of over the last several joint meetings. I also added a quick update on our sand bypass project. I think it is relevant to our shared coastal issues, and I'm going to talk a moment about beach dune. We've been working for several years on our countywide resilience plan. We had a board workshop in February of this year where we were able to present the results of that overall plan, and we've had some sizable discussions with our business community regarding strategies for moving forward. We included dozens of model scenarios. It included sea level rise, storm surge, groundwater conditions, rainfall variability. All of that was wrapped up in various range of probability and risk of different types of events, and then we use that to support the flood risk strategies. These strategies are kind of presented here categorically. All of our work relies upon the CNSF system functioning. So we're assuming that the level of service that needs to be provided by that system continues to be serviced. So it counts on the improvements to that project while we continue to work internally on our secondary and tertiary systems and landscapes. By and large, what we need to do is recover storage in our system. We need above ground storage, we need below ground storage, we need to create additional swales for storage, we need to build chambers under impervious areas for additional storage. We need to convey water better. We have a lot of gravity systems, we need pumps, we need canal improvements, we need culvert improvements, we need additional structures. So we've detailed these types of interventions in the modeling, coupled with seawalls, and it's a lot of seawalls. About 67% of total costs that we modeled as part of the plan are associated with seawalls, and these are heavily engineered in many regards with like 20-foot sheet pilings to help manage seepage, where we're talking about public infrastructure. So that's the type of strategies with a lot of green infrastructure that's integrated. These are just a few of the examples of what these types of things look like, and some of this also anticipates that with time we may need, and I know that this is not one of Senator Geller's preferred strategies, but we are talking about 2 to 1-way road conversions, lane conversions, and this would probably be in residential areas where we need additional storage with swales. We need that real estate, and you could either convert to 1-way roads or you could manage 1-lane road that accommodates traffic in both directions. And we've seen some of these up in Boca, seen them in other communities like Ann Arbor. So clearly these types of projects do serve other communities for different reasons, and in this case we'd be looking at establishment of swales and storage. In some of these cases, projects may not be the preferred option today, but in 10 years they might very well look quite attractive. And so it's recognizing that these are the tools that we have, and then deciding which tools work best in individual communities as those pressures continue to grow. Here's an overall summary of the detail of the locations of the projects countywide. So this is what was modeled for 2 and 3 foot sea level rise scenarios. So it allows for some phased implementation, lots of seawalls, pumps, and the types of improvements that I've described, and a banner kind of summarizing the totality of what was captured. Economic modeling was a significant part of the scope of work, and that was largely in response to requests of the business community to be able to translate hydrologic results to something that they could better value and that we can use in our communications with various stakeholders, risk rating entities, risk management interests, and financial institutions and partners. We used 5 different economic metrics. These were identified with the support of a steering committee that helped guide the entire process, and that included representatives from our business community and community-based organizations. Ultimately, implementation is shown to deliver billions of dollars in economic value and benefits across Broward County, affecting and benefiting property values, tax revenues, flood insurance affordability, overall insured coverage of potential flood losses, and avoided property damage. We saw in total about 85% reduction in exposed properties and damages, and you can see the totality of the estimated benefits for Tier 1, which is estimated 2 feet of sea level rise, 2050 condition, and then continuing to work towards that final tier of investments, which ultimately requires, and I'll just say heavily, the 7-foot seawalls. So it's moving from 5-foot seawalls to 7-foot seawalls, because with 2 feet of sea level rise and storm surge, or the 3-foot scenario, you just need something more substantial in the coastal environment to keep water out while we continue to manage water better within the more inland reaches. Overall, the plan is estimated at $28 billion. It's important to emphasize that part of that is public and part of it is private. We estimate about 2/3 of that will probably be, I'll say, accommodated through redevelopment and investments that occur on individual properties as part of enhanced water management drainage systems that occur, again, through the course of redevelopment, much like a lot of the water management infrastructure that's in place today. Public side of the investments is estimated at $9 billion, and that's where we would need public funding. We know that that's a big number, and our commission and Senator Geller, in large part, acknowledge that we need to be able to break these things down. So we looked at the hard infrastructure, that's the pumps, the canals, control structures, culverts. Those improvements within the secondary network, not the primary. We still need the billions of dollars on the primary system. As estimated about $100 million a year over 10 years, you'd be able to get those projects done. Then the idea is that you've got these additional projects that will, again, continue to evolve. You'll have projects of opportunity, land acquisition opportunities and the like, and continue to make those other investments over a longer time frame. We are moving forward in the meantime with improvements to, or I would say proposed amendments to our land use plan, and we will then expect to move into the county code of ordinances. We have a couple new maps that are proposed, one that identifies priority areas largely to address heat, flood risk in areas of economic vulnerability, socially vulnerable communities, and that's a large swath of central Broward County. And then we also have a map that details the amount of water storage that was modeled in order to achieve the flood reduction benefits within our larger plan, and we're working and have assigned those water volumes to these subbasins, and the intent being that you address that through redevelopment. Now I want to move briefly onto Sand Bypass. This project was identified as a core resilience strategy for coastal protection for Broward County. We've been working similar to the deepening and widening of the channel. We've been working on this project also for 30 years. This is about addressing sand starvation south of the Port Everglades Inlet.
The
And
littoral flow.
okay, the disruption of the littoral flow of sand from west to east that results in sand starvation on the south side of the inlet. Thank you.
I worked on this 30
All
years
right.
ago in the legislature.
So beach nourishment projects are costly. They're now, on the order of maybe $90 million. These large projects, including the mitigation that's involved. And so we're working on a project which will create a sand trap on the north side of the inlet, building I think it's about a 30-foot deep trap in the rock that will be dredged. We will collect the sand that otherwise accumulates, and you can see the massive offset of the shoreline north to south that accumulates north and is lost from the system because there's no place for it to go except for offshore. We will capture that sand and every average 4 years harvest that sand and transport it and place it on the south side so that it can continue its merry journey south. It's estimated that that project will satisfy about 50% of the sand needs for this reach of our beach, and thereby reduce the frequency and size of future projects. That's beneficial for a number of reasons, including sensitivities for our reefs, and the more we can do to help manage those types of projects is beneficial and environmentally. So this has very much been a preferred environmental solution. And it's taken a long time, but we are working very, very closely with our dear friends at the Corps who hold the permit alongside the state to help us with this final push, which we've got it permitted, and we're anticipating going to construction in September. And I'm going to skip these slides.
Thank you.
And the last one is just to acknowledge that years ago, all of our counties in Southeast Florida jointly mapped our green infrastructure, and that included dunes. Broward County was deficient relative to our partners to the north and the south. That caused us to amend our land use plan to integrate an 80% dune goal for our shoreline. Since then, we have built dunes into all of our large-scale beach projects. We also manage a dune granting program, and our segment 3 reach was just renourished in the last couple of years. We're getting ready to build almost another 6 miles of dunes in this reach, and that should happen in this next year. And that is the summation of my resilience updates. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Jurado. And in reference to the sand bypass, as I've said, south of the government cut there, the beach is about 3 feet wide, while at Point of the Americas to the north, you need a camel to get from the buildings to the water. They've gotten all of the sand there. At this point in time, are there any questions for Dr. Jurado? No, good.
Mayor,
yes.
Chairman, real quick. Will
yes.
this eliminate dredging that we typically know, where they bring the big dredge in? This will help eliminate some of that, or will it eliminate it altogether?
We will still require some maintenance dredging of the channel, I expect, but it should be substantially reduced.
Okay.
And this is bringing in a very large dredge from Great Lakes, dock and dredge, to do this work in itself. That will take a couple of years, but the channel maintenance should be reduced because we'll be capturing sand that would otherwise flow into the channel.
Thank you. And Dr. Jurado, I don't want to, again, repeat the bad news, but you're completely correct in all of your numbers, but there wasn't one commissioner of the 9 of us that was prepared to come up with that level of funding, and that was before they talked about all of these dramatic cuts. You're right. We need to spend that money. We just don't have it, and we're going to if they follow through on half the cuts that they're talking about, we're going to be going into emergency survival mode, and I don't know what to say. We need to spend the money, but we won't have it. We don't have it, and if it's getting worse.
Would you like me to respond?
No, but if you want to, I'll let you. I know. We need to.
I think that the issue is, quite similar to housing, where we recognize there's a massive need, but that.
We're going to be eliminating our housing
but-
funds
but-
as well.
But with time, you find strategies and you do it incrementally. And
Okay.
so I would just say not to be dissuaded by the total long-term costs. The important thing is incremental progress.
Okay. Now, the one thing I'm statutorily required to do at this meeting is there any public comment? Is there any public comment from anybody here in person? Do we have online? Okay. In that case, great. That was what I was worried about because we had to get through that. At this point in time, we have 5 minutes left for public discussion from the committee members. We have to adjourn in approximately 5 minutes. Are there any comments or questions? Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. My name's Thomas Stroud. I'm Executive Director of Lake Worth Drainage District. I just wanted the presentation that Paul didn't get a chance to present were about SERP water supply projects. Southeast Palm Beach County, we're really going to need them. The changes that the Corps needed to make with the lake schedule resulted in a deficit that increases our risk from having water shortages, more extensive water shortages during a drought. These SERP projects can mitigate that. So I just like your attention to sort of take a look at that. And it'll take time to work through all these projects, given the funding issues that you've discussed, but we want to make sure that that's not lost.
Okay. Commissioner Biederman, followed by Commissioner Caggiano.
Thank you, Senator. Just to follow up on a previous discussion with septic to sewer that we've discussed
Yes.
multiple times, the bill that Hollywood had submitted for allowing revenues to finance expansion of the sewer facilities passed unanimously in the House and the Senate. It's waiting on the governor's signature. Once that's completed, I know that Hollywood is going to reevaluate priorities and bond opportunities to close the gap of the 47% septic tanks in Hollywood.
The city
But
of
it'll help other,
Hollywood is
statewide.
the majority of the unsewered property in Broward County. So that's tremendous news, Kevin. I'm really happy to hear that. Commissioner Caggiano.
I'm going to be real quick. I'm just wondering, if we're looking at all these water problems, should we have, because, people go around, code goes around giving tickets to people whose grass is not green and stuff. We need to do more like Vegas does with rock gardens and things of that nature.
Xeriscape.
Yeah, so we don't have to worry about having green grass because we don't need the grass because we need the water.
Dr. Gerardo, did you want to briefly comment? If we tried that, the legislature would simply preempt it, but
Yeah.
go ahead.
I mean, we have 2-day-a-week water restrictions. People overwater. If they adhere to the water restrictions, the grass can be grown to be drought tolerant. I would say that having grassy areas is oftentimes better than dirt areas where you can get a lot of erosion and runoff and sedimentation. And so the grass helps to filter pollutants and keep, water in the ground. It does do that. But there are opportunities to substantially reduce grass in the landscape, which is the most water thirsty. And yes, there's opportunities to do a lot with regards to native plants that have less water demand and diversifying that landscape. So we've got Naturescape Broward programs and lots of, their Florida Yards and Neighbors. So I would just suggest that there's a lot of additional education and encouragement with regards to Florida-friendly landscaping, as opposed to rock gardens, which can work on certain properties, but there's other alternatives that are also acceptable.
Yeah, we just have people who complain because their lawn dies and they have to replace it, or their neighbors are complaining because they're overwatering.
Okay. All right, thank you, Commissioner Caggiano. In closing, let me just say in regards to the conversation that I'd had with Dr. Gerardo a moment ago, and that some of us have been discussing, I am amazed at the hostility that we're seeing towards both local governments and local control and taxes. Our leaders seem to believe that Many of you have heard me talk about the services ferry, who will come in and provide services without paying for them. Because if you don't believe in the services ferry, then we're going to have to pay for our services. And the concepts that are being discussed of either eliminating property taxes, which I refer to as the defund the police bill, because most local governments spend, including Broward County, spend the majority, over half of their funding just on first responders, or many of the other bills such as, or constitutional amendments such as changing the homestead to 500,000, which would take 80% or so off of the property tax statewide, maybe not here in Broward and Palm Beach, but it would still devastate our funding sources. Or I've seen another one that says, yes, you can keep your current taxes, but they can never increase. Not by the 3%, whatever you're charging now, just that's all you'll be able to charge in the future. So governments, each year you will have to spend less money because of inflation and, salary, things of that nature. I've been in government. I've served in either the House, Senate, Mayor of Broward County Commission in the 80s, 90s, 2000s, 2010s, and 2020s, and I have seen an increasing hostility towards government and taxes that I candidly don't understand. And it's the hostility towards government is coming by people in government who think it's politically popular and who know better. But not over your, okay. If I wanted to go back to Tallahassee, I would have run for my old Senate seat, which was open 2 years ago in 2022. Is that when Dr. Shreve was elected? Yeah, okay. I would have run for that seat. We need to understand taxes are the price you pay to live in a civilized society, and I don't understand the hostility and why they want to just eliminate taxes and think that the services ferry will provide. It has been a pleasure welcoming our friends and neighbors from Palm Beach. We will come up to you next time, as we always alternate. I would particularly like to thank and welcome my friend Howie Wise, who I see again on many occasions and regard as a great leader for us here in South Florida. And unless there's anything else, yes.
I just want to thank you all and reinforce that. I mean, in your points, government, we work together for the common good of our people, and we make decisions based on that common good, benefiting the most people using the limited resources that we do have. And it's unfortunate that there is a theme that has been running through this country about distrust of government, distrust of our ability to help solve problems. These are massive challenges that we all face together, and that is how we'll get through it. But we have to understand that it does cost money, and costs are increasing. I think we all agree, if we could do this for less, we would love to do that. However, that's not been the case. We haven't seen costs go down, and we haven't seen our ability to address these very large problems that are really about public safety and our ability to live in our communities with the lifestyle that we've all grown accustomed to. So I thank you. Thank you for hosting this meeting, and look forward to our continuing to work together.
And the last thing I will say is to show that I've been around too long, I quote Greg Weiss, Howie Weiss, and I apologize for that. Another Palm Beach guy that many of us know. Greg, thank you for being here. I'd like to again thank Colonel. You made an excellent presentation, Carolina as well. All of our speakers, Palm Beach people, thank you for making the journey down here, and we are adjourned.